Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, I am pleased to be joined by Mark Baker, my co-host, and Jo Marchant. Jo is a New York Times best-selling author and speaker. Her writing explores the nature of humanity. Oh man, amateur moves today. Let me start over again, guys. Sorry about that. The studio's not working. My phone's going off. I don't know. I think I got to retire here, Jo and Mark. Too many podcasts over the years. I'm getting sloppy here. Okay, ready. Welcome back to the Restoring Darkness podcast. On today's show, I'm pleased to be joined by my co-host, Mark Baker of the Soft Lights Foundation, and Jo Marchant. Jo Marchant is a New York Times best-selling author and speaker. Her writing explores the nature of humanity and our universe. From the mind-body connection to the mysteries of past civilizations and the awesome power of the night sky. You can visit her website at jomarchant.com. That's JOMARCHANT.com, or on Twitter at Jo Marchant, or on Instagram at Marchant Joanna, at Marchant Joanna. But before we get to the conversation, I want to invite you guys to go to restoringdarkness.com. And on that website, we have a donate link, and you can click to donate to the Lighting and Darkness Foundation. Now, what does the Lighting and Darkness Foundation do? We mitigate light trespass disputes. That's right. So if you have a neighbor, a commercial property, or someone like that that's just blasting light onto your property, we, the Lighting and Darkness Foundation, the lighting industry, will come and will tell the neighbor that they are trespassing on your property. It's not a nuisance, that they've directed light onto your property, and that this is irresponsible lighting. And we'll specify a lighting system that will work for them and work for you. So you can go to restoringdarkness.com. There's no charge for those services in Canada or the United States. If you want to donate to us, click the donate link. Why not become a recurring donor? We already have one. We got our first recurring donor, which is great, but we'd like to have a lot more of those. So go to restoringdarkness.com. Check it out. We also create educational programs for the lighting industry. That's for lighting industry professionals, because if this darkness restoration thing is going to happen, if this night preservation thing is going to happen, it's going to be the lighting industry that's going to do it, folks. That's right. So we have to become the lighting and darkness industry, like the Lighting and Darkness Foundation, right? There's nobody else that's going to go out there and change the lights except for us, the lighting industry. So go to restoringdarkness.com. Jo, welcome to the Restoring Darkness podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I loved what you said about lighting and darkness industry. I haven't really heard it put that way before, but that's such an important point to make. So thank you for that.
You know, darkness also has value, and we can provide that value
Absolutely.
as an industry, and we need to highlight that value. And that's what this show is about, Jo. And I'm trying to convince the lighting industry that there's a lot of money in this. Like, what are we waiting for? I mean, really, it's such a wonderful business opportunity for this industry to really engage and provide darkness for people and restore night and provide responsible lighting systems.
Well, I'm really interested in the cultural, sort of historical, spiritual, even value of darkness. So this idea that we can promote darkness as something that's positive and forward-looking, that has benefits for us as humanity, and it's not just a case of sort of pitting that against progress and against technology, but that we can use technology in a clever way to preserve that darkness, to have those sort of physical, social, psychological benefits for us as well. So yeah.
Well, the history of the lighting industry is really the extinguishing of darkness. It's like that was like the call of the industry was to, even in the beginning, Paris would be, the Eiffel Tower was to create a city at night and light up the whole city of Paris all the time. And this was, to people that, didn't have electric light in the past, light pollution was beautiful. It was a relief. They loved it. And, now it went from, kind of beautiful to conspicuous. And now it's disgusting. I mean, how many birds do we have to kill? How many, it's just so many different reasons to restore darkness and preserve night. And so we've seen this kind of shift and this, from beautiful to obscene and disgusting. And now we're in the point where light pollution is just so gross. When you can see it in photographs, it's not beautiful anymore. I mean, the Eiffel Tower is still beautiful at night, but the rest of the the 5,000K projection floods that are going up everywhere, this is not good.
I think we see it so often with technology,
Mm.
whether it's, I don't know, petrol or plastic or painkillers or sugar. This technology that has such benefits at the beginning, and then we just sort of forge ahead with more and more and more without really thinking about what it is that we're sort of losing or overriding. So it's that shift in perspective to thinking, how do we actually use these technologies in a way that promote and optimize well-being, rather than just thinking more and more is always better.
Or, the other thing too is why don't we stop running headlong forward into everything? I interviewed a fellow on this show that was talking about, the that system that Starlink internet connectivity system,
Mm.
right? So I think it was 500, Scott, or 5,000. There's 5,000 of those in low Earth orbit right now. Within the next 10 years, there's going to be 1 million of those. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, they're going to outnumber the stars in the sky, and it seems to be just this sort of economic race without any regulation, without there's no kind of wider thinking about why are we doing this, what are the sort of the positives and negatives of doing this, no oversight whatsoever. It's literally just sort of that economic drive of individual companies, and no one's really paying attention. And before we know it, that view of the stars that we have enjoyed as a species for millennia, it is going to be gone. It's not just a case of then light pollution on the earth, then even in the darkest places on the planet we're not going to be able to see the stars. It just, yeah, it seems crazy to me that we don't have a more joined up approach to this. And it struck me that when you see newspaper or media coverage of issues like Starlink, we sometimes hear from astronomers talking about how this is going to mess up their astronomical observations, which I think is really important. But it's less often that we talk about it in terms of just a cultural resource for humanity more generally, as something
Mm.
that's really important for all of us, even if we're not astronomers. That sort of cultural, spiritual, psychological importance, and that's something that I've been really interested in looking at in my work, is not just the importance of the sky for astronomers in terms of a scientific understanding of the universe, but what about all the other ways in which we connect with our sky, with our universe, with our environment? How have different people through history seen the sky? How has that been important to them? So what do we all lose as individuals if we lose that view of the stars?
Yeah, so my opinion on that is I don't even think astronomy is germane to the conversation. I'll be honest with you. I hate to say that, but I don't even think it's relevant. Like, oh, you're looking through it. There, I mean, I've gone to observatories. I've looked through a telescope. Oh, those three white dots. Those are the moons of whatever. Oh, okay, that's it. Yeah. Okay, I'd rather just go outside and lie and look at the heavens. Actually, that's more enjoyable to me. That's more I connect better with that. So while I thank astronomers for starting this movement with the Dark Sky Association, and they started that, this movement has nothing to do with astronomy really. It has far
Mm.
more to do with birds and turtles are born connected to the cosmos. They don't learn it. Like, that's so mind blowing to me. That, like, the birds they fly, their parent birds don't teach the baby birds that's the Milky Way, and the parent turtles don't go to the turtles and say, you follow that moon or
Mhm.
whatever. They just know to do that, and so that blows my mind when I think about that, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I love science. I wouldn't say it's irrelevant. I mean, I love astronomy. I think it's super important, but I do agree that we're missing this much bigger picture here, this much deeper importance that the sky has for all of us. And I think sometimes it's just harder to articulate, to measure, to quantify. We're so used to wanting to know the sort of the economic bottom line of
Mm.
everything, or what are we going to gain from this, and sometimes that sort of deep connection with the stars can be hard to say in a kind of hard-nosed capitalist society of exactly why that works. With Starlink, that's the intent there, is to give internet connection to remote areas all around the planet. That is really important. So it's being able to articulate and sort of quantify, I guess, those benefits of the stars and the sky more generally. Why do we need to save the stars? And yeah, so that's where I think we need to just have that bigger picture understanding of, as you say, the wildlife, looking at ecosystems and the effect that that's having. We know that it's, as you say, it's absolutely devastating. I think light pollution, artificial light pollution, covers more than a fifth of the land area of the planet now. A few years ago, scientists said that we should see that as a global threat on a par with climate change. I mean, it's huge in terms of the disruption that it's causing. But
It's
then
not a
also in
metaphor. Like
terms
light
of,
pollution is not a metaphor, Joe. It's often treated as a metaphor, but it's
yeah.
not. It actually is pollution.
Yeah, although I guess it's the one kind of pollution that if we wanted to, we could just switch off. Things like the climate solution and plastics, that's going to be so difficult and take so long to reverse some of these issues. But with light pollution, it's just a matter of the will. So from that point of view, I think it's a really exciting area where huge changes could happen very fast.
You know, Mark, before I go over to you, I know you have a great line of questioning ready for Joe here in a second, but I'm going to apologize to the astronomy audience out there. I'm sorry. You guys are Jumaid to conversation. I really love you guys. But from a non-astronomy perspective, which is 99% of all humanity, I don't think it's that important, guys. But it is important to you, so I love you guys, all the astronomers out there. Mark, go ahead.
Well, Michael, it's interesting you said that because I took a look at Joe's just fabulous presentation on her website. She has several. And I think she was talking about her book, The Human Cosmos. It's broken into sections, and she went through the history of, sort of time, human connection to the stars. And the way Joe presents it might give you a different perspective than what you just said. So, Joe, if I step back to where you started your story in that presentation, I think it was around 20,000 years ago. They have this cave art in France, and they have some kind of like an ox. And in this drawing is this ox, and then these stars are there. So you've talked about that. And the connection between the animals and the cosmos, and actually the drawings you said had very little of the human in it. So it was this connection to nature. And I liked what you did, and I think we should do it for this show, is that you talked about awe, AWE, awe. And it was an amazing way to start your presentation and amazing way to end it. So would you tell us what that is in this show? What is awe, and why is that important?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, awe is one of my favorite topics. So the emotion of awe is fairly new in terms of scientific research. It's obviously at that a feeling, an emotion that people have written about throughout human history. It's that feeling you get when you are confronted by something vast that dwarfs you, that's so huge that it's beyond your capacity to comprehend it. So when your mouth is open, your jaw is dropped, and you're just going, wow. And it's a little bit different to wonder, say. So wonder can be a bit more sort of rational, a bit more scientific, kind of, oh, there's a mystery here, let's solve the mystery, or I wonder how this works. But with awe, kind of all of that is gone. You just give yourself up to the mystery, the majesty of it. It's just that wow feeling. And people have written about this through history, but scientists have been studying it just for the last few years, and I think what they're finding is really interesting because their studies are showing that when we experience awe, that has a whole range of physical and psychological benefits for us. So they can do studies where they sort of trigger experiences of awe in people. And one of the most common ones is to show people either videos of the stars or the stars, the sort of the huge starry sky. And it makes us more creative, more curious, happier, less stressed, even weeks later. So improves well-being. But also it changes people's kind of outlook on life. So people become more generous. They feel more connected. They make more ethical decisions. They're more likely to make sacrifices to help a stranger. They care less about money and more about the planet.
Wow.
So it's this idea that when we're connected to something much bigger, people they talk about feeling more connected to that bigger picture, and they act in ways as if they're more connected, caring more about the planet, for example. And all researchers have actually warned of what they call ore deprivation in the last 50 years or so, where we're all looking at our little screens on our phones, and they're arguing that that's making us more selfish, more narcissistic. Our worlds are getting smaller and smaller. We're sort of worrying about our own sort of selfish concerns, whereas something like the stars, it kind of forces you out of all of that. It forces you to feel part of the bigger picture, to see kind of that bigger sense of what really matters, and it really changes people's perspective and how they live. I mean, with all of the challenges that we're facing today, these big sort of global problems, I think that awe is so important, and it's one of the things that the starry sky can give us. Not only the starry sky, nature in all of its forms, but the stars, the universe, it's that quintessential source of vastness that all of humanity has benefited from, and that we no longer have. So that's why, for me, awe was a big theme of my book.
There's a reason why we sent burned lamb smoke. Our ancestors sent burned lamb smoke up to heaven, right? Like when they were making sacrifices on altars, they didn't do it because of the clouds. They did it because of the stars.
Yeah, I think it's that connection to something greater, something that we can't necessarily understand, that sort of tells us something about our place in reality, our place in the universe, stops us from getting too self-obsessed. And so, yeah, you said that, as you mentioned, I started my book with the Paleolithic era and cave paintings, and this incredible painting of an aurochs bull in Lascaux Cave, and work that's been done showing that they most likely were actually representing maps of the stars with the animals that they were painting. And it just shows how right from the very earliest moments of human existence, the stars were so important to people. Lots of traditional societies, hunter-gatherer societies, we know, use the stars in their calendars. So they were using the stars to measure the passing of time, and they really saw the sort of different stars that are visible in the sky through the year, and different changes in nature through the year, as all just part of one interconnected system. So humans and nature, earth and sky, it's just one system that's changing through the seasons, through the year. And I think that disconnect, both from the sky and that disconnect from nature, that's happened in the modern world, it was sort of that separation is something that I'm quite interested in, how that happened. But yeah, right from the very beginning of human history, the stars were really important in people's environment, in their lives, in the changes that they were seeing throughout the year. And I do think that we've lost something very important now, that we're no longer connected with that.
In your presentation, then you stepped us through from 20,000 years ago and the cave paintings and the stars, and you brilliantly put it all together, connected it all from that time. The cave art started to change to more human centric, and then there was this sort of attempt to start to understand the stars. People started tracking when they appeared and when they didn't, and you got into mathematics. I previously taught middle school math, and before I became a math teacher, I took a class called The History of Math. And there was a book called The Men of Mathematics, and unfortunately, a much smaller book about the women of mathematics. But it also connected us through some of this time frame. And in your presentation, you sort of talked about this sort of big picture connectedness. And then as we started to get more knowledgeable about how it worked, things got kind of into sections, smaller and smaller sections. And one of your sections was about time, another talking about Newton, et cetera. Just in a technical thing, just because it popped into my mind right now, tell me something about these clocks. You had a thing like extent, no. So I didn't know this before. So these clocks were in sections, and it would go back and forth like that to allow the time to be synchronized. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, you mean the escapement? Is it the escapement? So
that was it.
yeah.
Just because. Go ahead, please tell us something about that.
Okay, well, yeah. So just the sort of the broad picture that I look at through the book is, how did we get from this really interconnected cosmos, we're part of nature, the sky is all part of what's happening, to being so disconnected now that we're losing our view of the stars. And for most people, it's barely even registering. And I think a big part of that is the rise of a sort of scientific or kind of mathematical understanding of reality, which I love. I think science is amazing, as I've said. But the more and more we've focused on the sort of the measurements and the calculations, the more we've sort of downplayed the importance of our personal experience, including our personal experience of the stars. And I look at how the stars used to be important in so many different aspects of life, in space and navigation. Like, how do you know where you are on the planet, which direction you're facing? That all used to come from the stars. And now it's our technology and our calculations, our GPS. You don't even need to look out the window. And then time as well. So time used to be experienced again through the stars. We see the sun, the moon, the stars circling through the sky. That was the very definition of passing time. And now with the invention of modern mechanical clocks, they're now more accurate than the sun. We don't need to look at the sky anymore. Again, we don't need to be aware of our wider environment. And so what I'm arguing in the book is that invention of mechanical clocks back in the 13th century was really crucial in terms of changing our ideas about time, taking time out of the sky, if you like, so that people are no longer needing to look at the stars. We're just looking at our clocks. And as well as that, it changed the nature of time from something continuous, like a continuous flow. You see the sun, the moon, the stars moving through the sky, into something digital that you count, the ticks of the clock. And the key part of that was this little mechanism that you're talking about called the escapement. It's inside the mechanism, and it just rocks backwards and forwards. And when the monks of 13th century Europe, they were trying to make these mechanisms that would run by themselves. They're trying to make clocks, mechanical clocks, to time their prayers. And they've got weights attached to chains, but then the weights would speed up as they fell to the ground. They couldn't get their mechanisms to run at a constant rate. And the escapement was the way they got around this. As it rocks backwards and forwards, it blocks and releases the chain into these regular, equal chunks. That's the ticks of the clock. So you're basically slicing up time. Time after that was no longer continuous. We think about seconds ticking by. It's something we count. So time is no longer an experience of the stars. It's a quantity. It's something abstract. It becomes more like money. You waste time, spend time, count time, save time. So it's just that fundamental shift from a qualitative experience of the universe, of the sky, of our lives, into sort of measuring and counting everything. And I think that's happened in lots of different areas of life. And it's been so important and influential in terms of building that scientific understanding. Our technology is incredibly powerful, but have we lost something along the way when we no longer just have that personal experience of flowing events around us? And so my argument in the book is that I think we need to recapture some of that. Yes, we have the science, we have the technology, that's brilliant, but we also need to sort of rekindle some of that awe and that personal connection with our environment.
The Canadian philosopher Marshall McLuhan, I think he's a one-liner kind of guy. He said the medium is the message, and then also he said, first we shape our tools, and thereafter our tools shape us. I think that is so
Absolutely
applicable in that regard with that. So back over to you, Mark. But I just had to say that because it's so obvious that that's a tyranny on us now. There's something about that's tyrannical, as you described it. That ticking back and forth instead of a flow. Now we're stuck going like that with the mechanical clock in a way through life.
Every aspect of our life is now determined by clocks, from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to bed. It's one of the first things children learn. You have to be on time for things. You're rarely out of sight of some form of clock. And there's a phenomenon that psychologists have identified now called time famine, which is where we're always rushing to meet deadlines. And so we always feel like we don't have enough time. And it seems like the more accurately we measure time, ironically, the less of it we feel we have, the more rushed we feel, the more stressed we feel. Studies have shown that when people are experiencing time famine, it actually has quite serious detrimental effects on our health, because people don't go to the doctor because they don't feel that they have enough time. They don't cook or eat properly because they don't have enough time. They don't exercise because they don't have enough time. So
he's too busy driving to stop for gas,
Exactly.
Yes.
So the more accurate our clocks get, yes, it's freeing in one sense, but in another, it's actually imprisoning us, because then we're sort of enslaved to that rhythm, and we're no longer just experiencing events in their own right.
Hmm. What a trap.
We're enslaved to that escapement thing that
Yeah.
they built
Exactly.
back forth back, and that now controls us. This invention, which was to solve sort of a problem to make the time more regular, and is a sort of a scientific engineering thing that they worked, and now we're all
Mm.
trapped in that. We're not connected to
Yeah,
these
and
the
you could make
stars.
a similar point with lighting, because lighting,
Hmm.
as you were saying, it's
Hmm.
freeing, and the opportunities that gives us. But if we're not careful, then that starts to control us, and it determines and shapes the environment that we then live in. And it's being able to step outside of that and thinking, okay, when is this technology serving us, and when do we need to kind of be a bit clever about it and row back on that? When do we actually need the darkness? When do we actually need perhaps freedom from those clocks?
It's interesting. Thank you,
Yeah.
Joe, for bringing us back to the purpose of the show, Mark.
Let, so this is all tied together, right? This is what is
Yeah, sure.
astonishing, that Joe has gone through history from cave paintings to tie us to the lighting
Mm.
industry is amazing. So Joe, there's another technical thing that happened that you, like most people, probably hadn't thought of and stuff, but you said, "Oh, this is a big deal." There were this a husband and wife in the 1800s, I think, in London, in your area, and they figured out with Bunsen burners and stuff, went to a presentation and figured out that you could do spectroscopy and measure
Very good.
chemicals. And then this person was an astronomer, and then he said, "Oh, I could measure the contents of the star, the chemical composition of the star." Now, I'm super interested in this because I go around every day as the president of the Soft Lights Foundation talking about spectral power distribution. It's become very important. Michael will talk about a 5,000K, a 4,000K light. He's going to go out and tell these people, "Oh, hey, don't have a 4,000K light." Okay, so what is this spectroscopy thing? How does that work? How did they figure
Mm-hmm.
that out? What does it do?
Yeah, so these were astronomers in Victorian times, so 19th century, and specifically, I tell the story of two husband and wife astronomers who had a telescope in their back garden in South London. Yeah, just around the corner from where I am now. But this was work that really changed what astronomers do with the light that reaches us from the stars. So for most of history, everything we know about what's out there in the universe comes from looking up, and we see the light that reaches us. But this was the finding that if you use a prism to split that light into the rainbow or the spectrum, and you look at the the different frequencies or the different colors, you can use the pattern of the bands in that rainbow to tell you which chemical elements are present in whatever it was that was burning and producing that light. So you can start to do chemistry. You can start to look at what elements are present in the sun, in the stars.
Hmm.
And scientists, not maybe just a few decades before that, had said that this was a sort of thing that scientists could never know. Like we could know, we could look at the stars and we could see how they move through the sky, or we could just look at how their appearance, but we would never know what they're actually made of because we can't get samples. But this was the finding that actually, if you analyze the spectra, so if you stop just looking at the light but sort of analyzing it mathematically and looking at the different frequency bands, you can do chemistry. You can tell what these lights in the sky are made of. And that was the birth of the field of astrophysics. So now we can actually start to see stars, planets, the sun as physical objects, and start to do the chemistry and start to work out how they're working. And that has led in turn to all kinds of insights about the universe. It was so spectroscopy has allowed astrophysicists to pin down the life cycles of stars, for example, how they burn and change through their lives, and that's enabled them to identify new kinds of celestial objects, things like neutron stars, supernovae, black holes. It was a redshift in the light from stars that told astrophysicists that galaxies are flying away from us in every direction. The universe is expanding. So that's what led then to the idea that the universe started in a big bang, because if it's expanding and you go back in time, it must have started at a tiny point. Spectroscopy has told astrophysicists that nearly every atom in our bodies was once part of a star. So it's kind of been quite a revolution in terms of building this scientific picture of the universe. So all of those myths and stories that we used to have about gods or beasts, mythical beasts in the sky, now that's all been replaced by these evidence-based stories about what stars and planets are made of, how the universe works, how it started. But the thing that I think is really ironic about it is that we have these incredible these really very powerful telescopes now that are all based on that same principle of spectroscopy, just looking at the different frequencies, patterns of the frequencies of the light, but no one looks through those anymore. So that light is all picked up by electronic detectors. It's analyzed by computer. We do the calculations. We come up with,
for sure.
and we get the results. But no one's actually looking at the stars. So we no longer need to look up. So all of our information about what the universe is coming from those computerized detections and calculations. We no longer, I think much of society no longer sees our view of the stars as telling us anything useful or important. We've kind of downplayed that in a way. Yes, we can look at the stars, isn't that nice? But the proper information that we need is coming from
the computer tells
these
us to
computerized
do it. The
detections.
computer has it there.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And I mean, it's an incredible understanding that we've had from that, but I don't think it's enough. I think that the knowledge that we get from that personal connection with the stars is so important. We talked about awe, for example. We've talked about the importance for wildlife. There's also biological sort of implications as well. We know that our biology depends on clocks that are sort of attuned to the light from the sun and the moon. So if we're not in contact with that light, that has real effects on the sort of biological rhythms in our bodies, and that can have medical implications such as everything from insomnia, obesity, depression to heart disease and cancer. So there's all kinds of reasons why we get important information, whether we're conscious of it or not. That sense of actually we're small and we're part of something much bigger, to the way that our bodies regulate themselves. All of that is coming from that personal connection with the stars. So we need that alongside the scientific understanding, I think.
This is a very poetic conversation. Every time you speak, you remind me of some poet or artist. I'm thinking of, Joni Mitchell's "We Are Stardust, We Are Golden." And we've got to get ourselves back to the garden. And you kept going. Then I thought of John Keats. Beauty is truth, truth beauty. That is all ye know on earth and all ye need to know. And so, there is an echoing through us that this is the wrong direction for us, that as a species and as a planet and all living things, that this imposition of all these technical devices is heading towards something that is not good. And we need to, while I'm not advocating for the abandonment of technology or computers or clocks or anything like that, I think there needs to be an imposition of awe, and we need our priests back. We need to be guided in a spiritual way and somehow. And that's lost on us. Everything's technical. Everything's science. Follow the science. Whatever it tells us is truth. And I don't believe that. I'm very troubled by people that say things like follow the science. It bothers me. I follow leadership, I don't want to get into a conversation about where that term came from, but there's something there's more to us than that, and there's more to everything on this planet than that.
Yeah, all really interesting points. For me, it's easy to blame science. I think the problem comes when we see science as telling us everything we need to know. And for me, a deeper problem actually comes from economics, that a lot of the research and the technology is being designed and pushed by big business for that profit motive. So I don't think there's anything wrong with the scientific knowledge in itself. It's how we use it. And all too often it's being used to make technology, to make profit that's being pushed on us, whether it's mobile phones, social media, to lighting, to, painkillers in medicine, lots of technologies that are being pushed on us that we don't actually need because they make profits for different companies. So for me, I think it's that side of things that we need to look at. We need the ability to step back, to stop. AI, I suppose, is another one that, we're all worried about the implications that AI is going to have. And I don't necessarily blame science for that. I think that's being pushed by the big technology companies who can make massive profits from this. And there's nobody overseeing that to say, well, is this actually good for society? Is this, taking humanity in the direction that we want to go? Is it actually improving
That's
our lives as
exactly what
individuals?
happened with lighting, Joe. Like that's exactly what happened with lighting. A couple not-for-profit institutions that influence government regulation and decision said the only metric we need from lighting is lumens per watt. That's it. I don't care about anything else. And in that quest, they destroyed all the major lighting companies in the world. All the major lighting companies in the world changed their names, left the industry, and got taken out by this lumens per watt quest. And we see light pollution has become absolutely out of control because of this. I don't think the 19th and 20th century words make sense to me anymore. Like left and right and capitalism and communism, and it seems so anachronistic to talk about these things now. Or your communism, or these are, when you look at and I don't want to go on a tangent here, but you look at China is not communist. If anything, China today is a fascist government. Like you have this marrying of business and government together. That's fascism. China looks like a fascist government, so their name is communist. And it's kind of confusing, and all these terms, and you're left and you're right, or you're conservative and you're liberal, or you're this sort of stuff. It doesn't make any sense to me anymore. I feel like we have to reach for a new terminology, or there needs to be something like a re-spiritualization. I think we see it in areas like the prescription drug abuse. Psychedelic drugs are all of a sudden taking off. All you hear about now is psychedelic drugs. And when you talk to someone about an experience with a beautiful starry sky where they put the cover over the person's face, they lay them down in a park and they take the cover off and the stars are above them, and it blows their mind. I've had these stories told to me on this show. It sounds exactly like somebody who's just tripped out on psilocybin, actually. They report the same emotions and feelings and after effects, like you were talking about earlier, the after effects of exposure to stars and this sort of thing. It's the same with psychedelic drugs. It's that people can't get these hits naturally anymore. So I think we need to start doing things differently, or looking at things differently, or using different terms. And I have no idea how to get there, but I want to start with the lights. Let's fix the lights, because I know how to fix that. And I think we could give people access to at least some stars and some awe in their lives. And most Americans have never seen the Milky Way. That's a tragedy. And that wasn't true 60 years ago. It's not true for their grandparents.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So I actually have a chapter about psychedelic experiences, and speaking to the researchers looking at that, they've said, yes, they're basically fast tracking you to that same experience of awe. So it's that same hit. It's just, as you say, we don't have access to that anymore. And I think we're, with all of the technology and the screens, and it's also addictive. It's just not giving us the space to step back and to see that bigger picture, and to think about where we really want our lives to go. So that idea of re-spiritualization is a really interesting one. And I think this darkness could be a really important place to start in giving people the possibility of those experiences, and the space to step back from some of this technology and think about what we really want out of our lives. Absolutely.
My introduction to this movement, Mark, I know I'm going to get back to you in 1 second. My introduction to this movement was Wolfgang Schievelbusch's book, Disenchanting the Night. It talked about how artificial light and electric light was created, and the impacts and all. That was the first book I ever read on this back in the 90s. And I think we need to re-enchant the night. It's something we could do. It's something we could do. And, the safety straw man is out there to get us. He's going to stop us from doing this. Safety. But there has to be a way. We have to go in this direction because I feel like we're like in a rabbit trap, Joe. You ever been on a survival trip or wherever you learn how to build a rabbit trap and you make the tunnel for the rabbit? So you find if you want to kill a rabbit in a trap with a snare, okay? What you do is you find out where the rabbit runs, okay, and then you put sticks along a run so that it goes in, and then the rabbit can't see. It just runs faster and faster and faster as the sticks close in on it from either side, okay, and then it runs right into the snare and chops its own head off. That's exactly how you get a rabbit. Okay, when you're if you're trapped in the bush, now you know. Okay, so get some snare wire, put it at the end of an angled tunnel like this, and the rabbit or the squirrel will cut their own heads off, and you'll be able to have a meal. I feel like we're kind of like in a rabbit trap with our technology. We're just the more of it we do, the faster we go towards the snare. And I want to stop us. I want to pull that. We have to be smarter than this. We're conscious. We're sentient. We have to be able to do this, to pull back from this a little bit. That doesn't mean we want to get rid of cell phones and all that, but is there a way we can put the brakes on here, Joe? And do we start that with eliminating and mitigating light pollution? You know what I'm saying? Like, that would be such a huge, fantastic step for us as a species.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, I think it's one of those things where we're going to have to hit it from lots of fronts at once. But absolutely, I think light pollution is a really important one. And it's something that I think about all the time, bringing up my kids as well. We live in London. They've never seen the Milky Way. And that really breaks my heart. So, yeah, it's just really difficult. But I do think that, the power that technology companies have is just, it's really daunting. I mean, they have more political power than a lot of nations do, that a lot of countries do. So, with the Starlink satellites, for example, it's difficult to see how you can kind of divert that course. But I guess all you can do is do it from the ground up, and each patch of darkness is perhaps giving somebody the space to have a different experience and to think about things in a different way. So, and as we mentioned at the beginning, it is something that you can change immediately. You turn the lights off, and the darkness is there, and there aren't many of sort of global problems that we face that you can say that about. So from that point of view, I agree, it's a really good place to start.
Joe, I'm going to ask you because you live in London. So I'm going to ask you a question about that. So to preface it, though, in the United States, there's a company that spent $1 billion creating something called the Las Vegas Sphere. This Las Vegas Sphere has LEDs around the outside, not the inside, the outside. So if you're driving down a street, these LEDs are put together like a screen, and so you might see a giant donut in front of you, or a jelly donut. It'll look just like a jelly donut, but it's the size of Mount Everest. I mean, in your view, this thing is overwhelming. Like the stars used to be over us. Now this sphere is over the people who live in Las Vegas. It's unbelievable. It's the sort of opposite of reining in everything. It's the growth that this person had $1 billion to spend. Now, in your area, they were about to build one of these spheres in London. And so, but do you know about it?
I saw today the headline that the developer has just withdrawn the plans. Thank goodness, because there was a big backlash against it. But it's awful.
That was a success story that it got withdrawn. That's something the mayor Sadiq Khan said. We don't need that. We're going to pollute our neighbors and stuff, and that's just something. Even though there's supposed economic benefit, but it was a success story in London.
Yeah, so you're right. There are success stories. Yeah, I mean, in general, I do think it's terrifying. The drones now. They're kind of like fireworks displays, but you can see drones and they're doing all these sort of messages and displays in the sky. Have you seen that? And you can just see, I find that really scary, the idea that there's now this ability to kind of put adverts or, different designs and messages in the sky. So as if all of the sort of the billboards and the advertisements and all of the influences that we're seeing kind of on Earth isn't enough. The sky has to be taken over as well. So yeah, no, that is really heartening that they've withdrawn that. So yeah, I guess it's just maybe just fighting against one project at a time. I don't know, because I think dark sky reserves, that has been a real success story. It's wonderful that we have those now. But then if you've got, whether it's the satellites or whatever it is, other influences in the sky, then it doesn't matter what lighting you have at ground level. So yeah, I don't know, one step at a time, I guess.
That sounds
You
like
used the
something from the
phrase-
book of Revelation, Mark. Like, I mean, what'd you talk about? Like, it sounds like, and the mother of the beast came out and, absorbed the sky with her lights. It's like crazy what we're doing. It sounds satanic.
I haven't seen it in real life, but the pictures are just, this is mind blowing what that is. Jo, you used a phrase, rescue our personal experiences. As perhaps a way to start backing out of all of this, to get back to all the way back to the stars. The experiences are being sent to us via our screens and such. And so this light pollution problem, and the stars are really connected. This importance of awe, bringing back awe, starts with rescuing our personal experiences, getting away from all the digital devices. And I say that LED light is a digital light. I used to like digital stuff a lot, but I don't like digital light. I actually want to get back to analog light. So what's this rescue our personal experiences? Do you know that phrase? Yeah. How does that work?
Well, I think it's so easy in today's society to be passive, to just be responding without thinking, like the rabbit in the trap that you were talking about. We're just bombarded by so many influences that are telling us what to read next, or what to listen to next, or what restaurant to go to next, or just or we're just on TikTok, or just, it's so easy to just sit there watching whatever video is served up next, and we're never actually actively making a decision about what we want to experience and what we want to be doing in our lives. So it's partly about taking that personal decision to just be more aware of what we are experiencing and what we are choosing to experience and to get from those experiences. So we can, whether that is switching off our own lights, or choosing to visit a dark sky reserve, or even in London, I'm trying to, this is just in terms of the sky. I mean, there's lots of other areas in life we can do this with as well, in terms of, turning off our mobile devices or whatever. But I am trying to be more aware of what's happening in the sky, and just to have rather than just having this tunnel vision of, if I can follow the moon from day to day and be aware of that path and the changes of the moon through the month, or I can still see the planets and to see the differences between the planets, and they all have different personalities in terms of how fast they're traveling and where you see them, and the color of the light. Or there's some of the stars, like Sirius has got this lovely kind of rainbow light. During the lockdown especially, I think the air was clearer. I don't know if it was less air pollution, but I was with my kids looking out of the window, and the Sirius was just there on the horizon. It was absolutely beautiful. So just I try in my own life to try and have a sort of a slightly wider, like bigger picture awareness, rather than just walking down the street. Or even if you're using your sat nav and you're just going north, I mean, that's not just a direction on a phone screen. It's not even that you're traveling towards the point around which the planet is rotating in space, but it's the point in the sky around which all of the stars turn. So it's just trying to connect our experiences with that bigger picture, with that universe that we're part of. So I guess it's everything really. It's just trying to be more mindful of the connection that we have with that bigger picture. I will try and find my own way rather than using sat nav, for example. Just try and be more aware of the environment, take streets that we don't normally take.
My kids get so mad at me when I don't use my navigation device. I'm like, Dad, you're going the wrong way. I know where to go, buddy. You don't have to tell me where I'm going. I know the city well. It's interesting because there's such a huge problem. So I think, and I don't mean to criticize others. I'm in this with you, but I'm going to speak to it as if everyone else has the problem and I don't. I was just the other day. I was in the office and I was speaking to somebody, and I'm a Canadian. Joe, Mark's an American. You're obviously British or English, and in Canada, like whoever the president of the United States is largely irrelevant. It makes almost zero difference to people's lives who the president of the United States is. Okay, and then one guy was like, we need Trump. What we need is Trump. I'm like, you're Canadian, buddy. It makes no difference to you who the president of the United States is. Like, no, yeah, it does, because he'll set up a minute. And another guy I was talking to was like, the worst thing would be Trump. If Trump came back, it's going to be a disaster. I'm trying to say to people, like, this has nothing to do with you. Who is your local MP? Who are the local city councilors? Who's the mayor in your city that's making all the decisions that impact your life? Like, it makes no difference who the Prime Minister of England is, who the President of the United States is. It makes zero difference to Canadian life, okay? We're a rich country. We're on our own. We're sovereign. We have our own problems right here. Who the mayor of your city is, who your local councilor that's getting the garbage picked up, that's going to change the lights in your town, that's going to do all the different things in your life. We need to draw back away from this global crazy making, that we have no control over what happens in Israel and Palestine or Ukraine and Russia or Brexit or Trump or these other things that we have very little control. All we could do is vote every 4 or 5 years. That's it. Right? After that, you got to go back down and start doing the Restoring Darkness podcast, Michael, or, selling light bulbs every day. Mark, you got to go back and support the light trespass cases that are out there. So I think we have to draw back, I think, into these places of localness and into our local subsidiary environments where we actually can make a difference and have an effect. And what's happening with our technology, it's pulling us out of that and making us hysterical on every single issue all over the world that has probably no impact on our lives. And the people over there, wherever they are over there that are suffering, they're probably better off if we just didn't get involved in the first place. You know what I'm saying? With, it's so great. Elon Musk's satellites are going to give the internet to all the people in X country that don't have it right now. That's awesome. Maybe it isn't awesome. Maybe we should just leave them alone. I don't know. And solve our own problems right here in Stouffville, Ontario, Canada. You know what I mean? Or in London, or where Mark is in California. I think part of the problem is this technology kind of pulls us into this global hysteria over problems that we have no control over. And in doing so, we lose all these local battles.
Yeah, I guess, rather than seeing it as sort of withdrawing from the global and looking at the local, you could see it perhaps as sort of embracing our actual physical environment that we are in and connected to and a part of, rather than the world that's on our screens. I mean, I think global politics is, of course, important, but sometimes we get sucked into that and then neglect that, the actual world that we live in, the people who are around us, the buildings where we are, the streets where we are, the sky that we can see. So that, yes, that physical, personal connection with our environment. So I from that perspective, I would definitely agree that it's very seductive. It's easy to be on Twitter and fire off angry messages about things and think we're doing something to change the world, when there's a real world like right on our doorstep that we could be doing something to change.
I couldn't agree with that more. I think all social medias have the same algorithm. They're just geared to one of the 7 deadly sins. So Twitter is rage, and Facebook is envy, and Instagram is vanity. And so they work the same way, except your proclivity to one of those sins will make you interested. There's Twitter people, right? There's people that like Twitter, and then Instagram people don't get Twitter at all. Like, what? Why would I be on that thing? I want to go flex on the gram, right? They all work the same, except they allow you to commit that sin digitally all the time, all day long, whether it's rage or vanity or envy or sloth or greed or lust or whatever it is. But I think we've talked a long time, and I feel like we could talk for longer, Mark and Joe, and it's just been such a wonderful, wonderful honor to speak to you today. Do you have any final thoughts for the Restoring Darkness listeners?
Oh, goodness. I mean, we've covered so much.
I know.
I think it's just, take a breath, take time, step back and think about your connection with your environment and what do you want that connection to be.
And Mark, if you want to check out Mark's work, you go to the softlights.org, Mark, softlights.org. I got the website right this time, I think. Yeah. And if you want to help us, the Lighting and Darkness Foundation, that's right. We were started by 70 lighting distributors and about 25 lighting manufacturers in the United States and Canada. And what we do is we're here to help people down right at the local level. So if you have a light trespass issue, if you have a neighbor that's blasting light into your yard or something like that, we're not going to be on your side, but we're here to help everybody compromise and understand and bring in the idea of responsible outdoor light at night. We're the lighting industry. We sell light fixtures. So we're not against light like Mark is. Mark hates LED lights. Isn't that right, Mark? But we don't here at the Lighting and Darkness Foundation, but we're here to help you. We're also creating educational programming for lighting distributors and lighting manufacturers and people we call frontline lighting practitioners. That's agents, distributors, contractors, and representatives, manufacturers representatives, people that work with people on the end user point so we can then educate the end user about why cutoff wall packs are better than non-cutoff wall packs and so on. And this is where the rubber meets the road, at the counter right here at Atlas Lighting where I am today. At that counter out there, that's where these decisions get made. They don't get made in Washington, Ottawa, or London. They get made right at the counter of Atlas Lighting. And so that's what we're here to do. And if you want to donate to that cause, you can go to the restoringdarkness.com website. Yeah, it's not the best website. We're working on it. We're going to make it really fancy and schmancy, but you can help us make it fancy and schmancy by volunteering your time or donating to us. So click the donate link right there and help us out. And if not, you can join NAILED. You can join all sorts of lighting associations out there, but embrace this issue, lighting industry, because not only is it morally the right thing to do, but we're all going to get rich. I can give you all the reasons in the world. It's great spiritual, but it's also a good avenue for you to add to your business and make money. Be the local person that is the dark sky expert or the night preservation expert. That's right. Go to restoringdarkness.com. Join the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors who financially supports this show. And thank you for listening. Bye for now.